Ahoy there, you scallywags! Just sit right back and you'll hear a tale of a fateful ship. A crew that was mighty strong they all had giant mitts. They all had giant mitts because Roger was very aware of the dangers in the kitchen. He made sure all of the chefs and cooks on the Oro Jackson made sure to wear protective oven mitts so they didn't burn their hands when taking stuff out of the oven. That's the kind of man Goldie Roger was. He was a true captain worthy of praise. And actually, I wonder who was... Oh, by the way, this is Buggy Chopper. Say everybody to Buggy Chopper over here. But that makes me wonder. I wonder who was the chef on the Oro Jackson. We knew Crocus was the doctor, you know, we know Rayleigh was the vice captain and all that stuff. I'm gonna say Douglas Bullet was the chef. You know, he's this really large, muscular, imposing guy that could just beat the crap out of you, but, you know, behind the scenes, he wore an apron and a little tiny chef's hat, and he was just like, "Men, I made this souffle! It's my specialty! I hope you enjoy!" I'm sure he had a fun time while he was on the crew for the little while. Okay, so I should mention that right out of the gate. I'm going to be talking about Douglas Bullet, who is the main villain from the latest One Piece movie, Stampede. I'm not going to go into detail on the plot of that movie, mostly because I'm assuming the way that we're going to do this is the same way we did it with Shiki, where Shiki himself, the character, is canon in the One Piece manga, but the events of his movie, Strong World, are not. So I'm hoping that Douglas Bullet, like, later on in the story when Oda finally draws, like, Goldie Roger's backstory, we'll actually get to see him there as part of the crew, but the events of Stampede and the Pirate Expo and all that stuff, that actually did not happen, right? Because it just doesn't make sense for the continuity. But I hope they keep Douglas Bullet around. So, spoiler warning, I guess, because I'm going to be talking about Douglas Bullet's character and his past and his Devil Fruit ability, which is just going to lend itself into Stampede spoilers. So, I think the movie's been out for a few weeks now, and I think even, like, his Devil Fruit was revealed in a trailer, like, what he could do. And also, big spoiler, he's really freak show strong. I don't think that was a spoiler for anybody. I was like, really? Really? The main villain of this movie that celebrates 20 years of the One Piece anime, and he was known as the Demon Heir and a member of Roger's crew. He's kinda tough. Go figure, right? So, we'll be talking about him. Alright, so I already made a video about Roger's crew back in like 2017, but we found out about Douglas Bullet, and we also found out about Oden recently, a couple more stuff about him. Suffice it to say, Roger's crew was pretty badass. Like, how badass? Like, well, let's think about this. Oh, okay, so you guys know about that third type of Haki, Conqueror's Haki. You know, it's not very common in the world. You can't train to unlock it. You pretty much just have to be naturally born with it. You know, the color of Conquerors, the power of the king to exert your aura and presence on the hapless people of the world. You know, that kind of power. Like Whitebeard, and Shanks, and Ace has it, and Luffy has it, and Toph. How many people on this poster have Conqueror's Haki? Hancock has it. I think that's everybody. 6 people on this poster that have it. Yeah, it's a very rare ability, and I'm just like, oh yeah, there's 6 people back here that have it. Moria, get off. You don't have it. Mihawk probably has it. Jinbei, I don't know, maybe. Blackbeard, it would make sense. Kuma probably doesn't have it. But yeah, so a lot of people have Conquerors on that poster. You know who else has Conquerors or has a lot of Conquerors in their group? The Roger Pirates. So let's go down this list here. We know Rayleigh has it. You know, he was the first one to really, like, showcase a really powerful level of Conqueror's Haki, and he taught Luffy how to control his, so Rayleigh was the vice captain, the Dark King, he had it. Oden had it, Kozuki Oden, probably one of the strongest samurai to ever come out of Wano. It's been confirmed that he has it. Douglas Bullet from the movie, he has Conquerors. Shanks, now, here's the thing. It's really been explained that, you know, you basically just have to be born naturally gifted to have that kind of Haki. It's not something you could just train to unlock later. And we saw this with Ace. Ace had Conqueror's Haki when he was really young, and he utilized it against the Blue Jam Pirates, right? We didn't really get to see Ace use Conquerors anymore after that, but I would imagine you're born with it, and when you're, you know, dealing with some moments of, like, extreme stress or danger, you can, like, release it in bursts, but you can't really control it. Shanks right now is a master of Conqueror's Haki, but you have to keep in mind, he was really young when he was journeying on Roger's ship. Even younger than I thought he was. At the time when Roger's crew was squaring up to fight Shiki in the Ed War, that was 27 years before the start of the series, or before currently in the story at, you know, right now when we're at the post-time skip. But during the Ed War, at the time period, Shanks was 12. 12. All right? Like, 12 years old, journeying on the King of the Pirates ship, the Oro Jackson, in the New World, squaring off against Shiki, which now that I think about it, it's entirely possible at that time, in that era, Shiki might have been a Yonko. You know, like, because I don't think Kaido and Big Mom, maybe that wasn't really their time to become Yonko quite yet, but if not, then Shiki would have definitely qualified. He was a really famous pirate back then, and here you have 12-year-old Shanks, and Buggy too, because Buggy's the same age as Shanks. They were both 12 years old as apprentice pirates, and from what we've seen from the backstory, it doesn't really seem like, you know, Roger was like, okay, Shanks and Buggy, you hide below decks while we fight against Shiki, and Shanks and Buggy are down there like, I don't know what we're gonna do, Buggy, I don't know, we're just a bunch of helpless kids, we're gonna die. You know, they seem to be involved in the fighting. Like, come on, Buggy, let's go fight against Whitebeard's crew, or fight against Shiki's crew. Like, they were part of it, so... I mean, I guess Roger was effectively, like, their legal guardian. So how would you like to have Roger for a guardian? Just like, hey, yeah, come on, kids, let's go on a field trip to the New World. It should be fun. So, yeah, Shanks was really young back then, and you had all these people like Roger and Rayleigh to kind of teach them about their hockey, but I don't think 12-year-old Shanks had control over his conquerors as much as he does right now. But he still had the aptitude for it, right? Buggy, of course, has it. We all know that. No, of course, Buggy does not. It's not, well, okay. To be fair, it's not confirmed he doesn't have conquerors. He could still awaken it at some point, right? It actually hasn't even been confirmed that Roger had it. I know, right? That sounds weird. You'd think that would have been confirmed by now, that Roger definitely had Conqueror's Haki, considering he's the king of the pirates. And I'm sure he did, but we just don't know. It's never been confirmed one way or the other. We know he had the voice of all things, which is closely connected to observation Haki, but beyond that, we didn't know. So, yeah, we're just going to assume he does have it. So Roger, Rayleigh, Douglas Bullet, Shanks, even back then, he probably still had at least the ability to use it. And then Oden. 5 people on Roger's crew. 5 people that we're aware of. Stopper Gabon could have had it. You could tell me Crocus could have had it, or Seagull. Remember Seagull? Jonathan Livingston Seagull. No, not that Seagull, this Seagull, but still, he might have had it too. So yeah, point of this video though, Roger's crew had a bunch of powerhouses on there, okay? So let's talk about Oden first, okay? Because Oden, we're finding out a lot about stuff, you know, related to him and Wano. He was the swordsman that caused the scars on Kaido's body. He has Enma, and he has Ame no Habakiri, which are his 2 blades. Now, of course, when he caused the scar on Kaido's body, that was after he journeyed with Roger's crew, because that was 20 years ago. Roger was executed 24 years ago, right? But still, I don't think the 4 years... I'm sure he was every bit of a badass samurai when he was journeying around with Roger than he was when he sliced down Kaido, right? I'm sure there wasn't that much of a gap in power there, okay? So I'm sure he was really strong. In fact, I even started to think about it, you know, during this era, let's just say 25 years ago, when Roger was in, like, approaching the end of his journey. It was 25 years ago that the Oro Jackson and the Roger crew actually arrived at Raftel, or Laugh-Tale Island, and they got the One Piece. And then the year later, like, they, you know, they disbanded and everything throughout that year, and then Roger got executed the following year, 24 years ago, okay? So, you know, let's just say 25 years ago, the strongest swordsman in the world very likely could have been Oden. I mean, he has the pedigree. He's an epic samurai of Wano. 2 of these world-renowned swords eventually would become the only man to scar the body of this indestructible beast known as Kaido. And he journeyed with the King of the Pirates. Like, 25 years ago, like I said, Shanks was like 14 at the point. He was 14 when they actually arrived at Laugh-Tale and they saw the One Piece and they found it. He was 15 when Roger was executed. So I'm sure Shanks wasn't the strongest at that point. Mihawk, I always think Mihawk is a little younger than Shanks. He's actually older. I guess the reason I always think that is because I want Mihawk to look up to Shanks as sort of like, you know, oh, he's the greatest swordsman. I'm gonna, you know, best him. But no, Mihawk is actually older. So I think he's like 44 or something right now. So Mihawk probably would have been around late teens, maybe like 20 years old around the time Roger was executed and all that stuff. So, I mean, he was probably a very prolific swordsman back then, but probably not the best in the entire world quite yet. He probably didn't even have Yoru back then, okay? Because that was a long time ago, right? So yeah, I'm gonna go on the record and just say, okay, maybe Rayleigh, maybe only comparable to Rayleigh at the time. If you want to say Rayleigh was the best swordsman in the world or Oden was the best swordsman in the world, either of those I could go with, and it doesn't matter either way because they were both on Roger's crew. So Roger, king of the pirates, epic dude, he has the #1 greatest swordsman in the world, and the second greatest as well, both on his crew. If you want to say Oden was the greatest swordsman, fine, then Rayleigh was probably close to being, if not the second, or if you want to flip that and say Rayleigh was the best, then Oden was the second best. Roger commanded both of them, alright? So that's pretty epic. Douglas Bullet, his whole backstory, right? You know, he was raised in this war-torn country, and he was raised to basically, like, not like a super soldier like Captain America. It wasn't like he was injected with anything. It was just like he was raised in this extremely war-torn country, and he was just, like, fighting battle after battle after battle, being awarded these great medals every year, and this war apparently had been raging on for, like, a very long time. It's sort of like the bridge at Tequila Wolf, where the bridge was being constructed for so long nobody even knew what it was for anymore. The same thing with this war where Douglas Bullet was being raised. It was like this country that was in war with this other country for hundreds of years probably, and they all probably forgot what it was about. The war ended because of Bullet. Because of Douglas Bullet at, like, the age of, like, 9 or 10. Alright, so he was incredibly physically powerful, and then at the age of 13, he ate his devil fruit, the gasha, the gasket fruit, that allowed him to assimilate various mechanical objects, kind of similar to Kid's fruit, but Kid's fruit is just simply, like, magnetism. Like, he's literally just drawing in metallic objects to him with a magnetic charge, and he can, like, forcibly mold, like, he can pull in, like, cannonballs and scrap metal and, like, swords and mold them into a giant arm, but Bullet could actually make use of the mechanical structure of those devices to make, like, giant mech suits and, like, metal ships and, like, submarines. Like, that was his fruit, right? So he ate that later. The only person in his entire life that was able to best Bullet was Roger. He went to go and fight against Roger, and Roger beat the crap out of him, and then he joined Roger's ship for a while, kind of admired the man. Kind of similar to how Ace tried to fight against Whitebeard and then got the crap beat out of him, and then even after Whitebeard accepted him on the Moby Dick, Ace still kept trying to fight against Whitebeard, and he lost every single time. It's kind of something similar to that. He was given the epithet as the Demon Heir, and I think it's easy to see why, because Douglas Bullet, also pretty young, he's 45 at the time of the movie, which means that he would have been 20 during the time of Roger's, like, journey to Laugh-Tale and everything like that. So not quite as young as Shanks, but look at it from an outsider's perspective. Look at it from, like, the Marines, you know, watching Roger going around in his heyday, doing this big epic journey through the New World. You got Roger, you got Dark King Rayleigh, you got Oden, who's this great swordsman, Rayleigh and Oden, great swordsman, and then you have this guy, Douglas Bullet, who, compared to the other guys on the crew, Bullet is pretty young, but his physical strength is, like, off the charts. Going a little bit more into the movie here, Buggy's somebody that actually closely knows Rayleigh because he journeyed with him and everything. Buggy hypothesized that he's about on equal strength with Rayleigh. In fact, he might be even stronger because Rayleigh retired. Rayleigh isn't, like, you know, hitting the gym every day anymore. Like, I'm sure, you know, there's things he learned in his past. Like, Rayleigh will always be a good swordsman. Like, that's kind of the stuff you can never really forget, especially when you're Dark King Rayleigh. But in terms of, like, you know, keeping up with, like, strength and, like, swordsmanship, like, I'm sure Rayleigh doesn't do that all that often. Rayleigh spends most of his time, honestly, chilling out in the amusement park or going gambling or, you know, hanging out at the bar with Shocky, you know, getting it on there. So that's what Rayleigh does. He's retired, you know, he doesn't do the pirate thing anymore. But Douglas Bullet, on the other hand, you know, Buggy's looking at him and he's like, man, this guy looks like he hasn't stopped training, you know, and sure enough, even after being imprisoned in level 6 Impel Down, and by the way, the reason why he was imprisoned, kind of the same thing that happened with Shiki, you know, Garp and Sengoku had to get involved. Plus, one up on Shiki, they had to bring an entire Buster Call to bring this guy in. Now, I know, you know what, as I'm sitting here describing Douglas Bullet to you, you know, not getting into the plot of the movie, but I'm just sitting here and, like, doesn't Douglas Bullet kind of sound like somebody's, like, really ridiculously powerful One Piece OC or something? Like, I could just, like, I wasn't that into One Piece when I was a teenager. I didn't really start getting into One Piece until, well, yeah, kind of, like, 16, 17. That's when I started reading One Piece on, like, a weekly basis, right? But this would be like if I was, like, back in high school and I was gonna create my own One Piece OC. I'd be like, and so, he's this ridiculously muscular guy, and he's even stronger than Rayleigh, and he was on Roger's crew, and he has Conqueror's Haki, and he's so buff, and he just one punch can level a mountain, and he ended a centuries-long war just at the age of 15. No, at the age of 10. He ended this centuries-long war, and he has a devil fruit that allows him to turn into a giant mech. He kind of sounds like that, doesn't he? Like, and he's not a canon character. He might be a canon character, but he's a character that was designed by Oda, and he's in a movie. Like, it's crazy, right? So, but it works. It works because One Piece is over the top kind of series, and just the opening right now is over the top, but it is that kind of series, right? So a character like Douglas Bullet, it fits, he does kind of fit in the story, right? This ridiculously, and especially if you're gonna make him that character, it's basically like, fine, you can have that character, but he's got to be a member of Roger's crew. And of course, that just helps build up Roger even more. And that just adds to the mystery. In fact, I'm thinking that's why Oda probably did it. Oda's like, okay, all right, yeah, we're going to have this character named Douglas Bullet, and he's going to be so ridiculously physically strong, it's just going to be off the charts, okay? And he's going to have such a ridiculously powerful devil fruit, and he's going to have Conqueror's Haki, and he's just going to have an armament Haki, like some of the best in the entire world, and we're going to have all this crap about him. He still took orders from Roger. As if Oda was like, yeah, I can use this movie as a good basis for how much of a biggity badass Roger's gonna be. Like, can you imagine, like, freaking Bullet then going up against... And I still think if Roger, Roger was alive in his prime, he would still probably be able to kick Douglas Bullet's ass in his prime, Obviously Roger's dead, but... he could probably do that, right? And the funny thing is, we still, to this day, do not know how Roger fought. Did he have a devil fruit? We saw him use a sword, like when he was going up against Shiki, he took out a cutlass and like, "Me hearties, we shall charge!" And we knew he talked like a pirate, which that might have been a power in of itself. He could hear the voices of all things. He definitely had conquerors and armament and observation. I mean, come on, of course he did. But beyond that, we don't actually know how he fought. So I'm thinking, like, how much more ridiculous could Roger's, own power be? If he had, these greatest swordsmen, and he had Bullet, and, oh wait, no, pause. Before we keep talking about Roger, I want to talk about Crocus really quick, because going into this, I'm looking at Crocus, and I'm like, man, I never made a solid video about that dude. I really should, but I just want to bring up right here, okay? So, some of the best swordsmen in the world, the physical, like one of the best, if not the best, physical fighters in the world, Douglas Bullet. He's got all those people on his crew, right? Crocus, by extension of that, is probably one of, if not the greatest doctor in the world, maybe rivaled by only Dr. Kureha. Because you figure, Roger has this really rare illness that he knows is going to kill him. He knows it's not, that's why he did the final journey. He's like, he contracted this illness somewhere, and he's like, all right, I know that I'm not going to last many more years after this. We need to do this. If we're going to do this final journey, and go to the end of the Grand Line and to the end of the New World, a place that nobody's ever been before, it's got to be me, and it's got to be now. All right? So, he knew he had to enlist a doctor. Now, keep in mind, Crocus was not part of the Roger crew at the very inception. He wasn't there at the beginning. Crocus was only a member during the final journey. So, that means that before Crocus, the Oro Jackson had to have a few doctors. Roger's not an idiot to travel the world for decades as a pirate without having doctors. So, already he probably had some pretty solid doctors on the crew. But they weren't up to the task of dealing with this illness. Roger recruited Crocus. He sought Crocus out. I think it's kind of shown in the anime and in the manga maybe, that's they were at the lighthouse, they landed in the Grand Line at the Twin Capes, and it was a sort of thing where it's just oh, come on, Crocus, join in. And Crocus, of course, wanted to go because of the whole deal with finding the Rumbar pirates, Brooks' old crew, so that's why Crocus went. But that sounds like too much of a coinky-dink. That sounds like, no, Roger heard about Crocus. Like, why would he do that? Why would he just be like, oh yeah, random lighthouse keeper, I'm sure you could deal with this illness that none of my even own doctors could even really deal with, this incredibly incurable illness. I'm sure you can help me out with that. No, I'm sure Crocus has a pedigree, and, you know, like, he has that flower aesthetic. You know, his name is after a flower, of course. There might be an island somewhere in the world where Crocus is from. I'm sure he was not born on the Twin Capes. I'm sure there's an island where he's from, maybe like the Torino Kingdom, a place that has all these really unique herbs and stuff and flowers and plant life that Crocus learned how to use medicinally growing up. Maybe, you know, there's like a bunch of people in his homeland that all have flowers coming out of their bodies, and they're all named after flowers, and they learned all this medicine, this really rare medicine. Like, we'll probably find out he's a member of the, I don't know, the member of the freaking, you know, Flora tribe. I'm not very creative here, but you know what I mean. Like, it's like, oh yeah, there's a group of these people living on this island. They're kind of isolated, but they have all these, they have the greatest medicine and the greatest herbs in the world. And here's a member of the tribe at this Twin Capes, at this lighthouse I hear, his name is Crocus. We're going to enlist him. So don't overlook Crocus. Don't look at Crocus and just say, like, oh, he was just there by happen chance, or, oh, he was just there to go and see where the Rumbar pirates are. No, he was a really good fighter, and it was even stated by, like, Rayleigh, like, yeah, he was a hell of a doctor. He was able to keep Roger's illness at bay long enough for a multiple year-long journey. It was like 3 or 4 years or something for them journeying through the Grand Line and through the New World to get to Laugh Tales. So, Crocus, very important. I'll be definitely making a video about him. But yeah, so going back to Roger himself, I can either see this one of two ways that Oda's gonna take this, alright? The first way is just make Roger the single most, like, powerful, manly man among pirates that ever did pirate. You know, just have him, like, take off his, like, coat and his shirt and have him just, like, buff up like Master Roshi. Like, boom! I am king of the pirate! Like the Incredible Hulk in terms of physical power. Like, make his natural abilities just so ridiculous, so crazy, that it's just like, you can't help but love it. And once again, like, it would fit in the One Piece world, you know, just like his hockey, like, it's sort of like Chuck Norris. Hell, maybe Chuck Norris might have been a member of the Oro Jackson, probably, right? You know, like, it was said that Goldie Roger grabbed a rope and then wrangled the moon itself and then carried it down and took a bite out of it, and it was cheese. You know, like some ridiculous stories like that. You know, and considering that high adventure and, you know, epic stories of great warriors and pirates from the past, you know, that's a big part of this story. So if you want to come up with all these crazy sayings and things that Roger did in the past, and he did them all, that would be great. So that's one way Oda could take it, you know, like, you know, Roger and Chuck Norris, they fought for 3 million years in a row, but it was Roger that actually beat them down, right? And it destroyed a galaxy in the process, you know. So, okay, obviously not that ridiculous, but, hey, you know. Or the other way you could do it, the other way you could show it is, Roger had some sort of ability, a devil fruit ability, let's just say for simplicity's sake. The ability was kind of silly and ridiculous. Not something you would immediately think the King of the Pirates to have. Sort of like Luffy. I mean, Luffy, main character of a shonen manga, really strong character. Luffy cannot shoot energy beams and summon, like, giant crazy foxes to fight on his behalf. No, it's just, he's made of rubber. But Oda figured out a way to make that really impressive. It's a really wacky ability. I made a whole video about, like, how just One Piece is really silly, basically, and that was one of the reasons. Like, your main character can stretch, like, and he can, like, grab his private parts, his family jewels, and, like, stretch them. Like, that's kind of goofy. But he made it cool. So I don't think Roger has, like, he doesn't have, like, the Gumu Gumu no Mi. He doesn't have the same fruit as Luffy. But it might have been, like, along that same vein, where Roger had, at first glance, a really weird kind of power that doesn't seem to be very applicable in terms of combat, but he was able to train with it and twist it and make it such a strong ability that he was revered throughout the world as the king. Like, for example, like, okay, let's go that angle with it. Let's say Roger had a devil fruit that whoever he touched or ever he hit, any enemy that he wanted to, force them to laugh uncontrollably. Sort of like Mrs. Joke's ability from My Hero Academia, right? Let's say Roger, whoever he hit or touched with his power, broke out into an uncontrollable laugh. Like, at first glance, that's a really goofy power, but think about it, like, Douglas Bullet rocks up to him and is like, "So, you're the Pirate King! People say you're pretty tough. Are you tougher than me? Gadoosh!" And then Bullet goes to punch him, and then Roger just dodges him and just, like, hits him, and then knocks him back, and then Douglas just, he's laughing on the ground, he can't move, he can't breathe, he's, and Roger's just like, "I am indeed, son, I am indeed. Join my crew." Like, if that was honestly Roger's power, I'm sure there's plenty of you that wouldn't like that. That would be like, okay, that's really silly, but I'd be fine with it. I'd be 100% fine with it. Because, Oda's always doing the unique laughter styles and everything. All the characters have unique laughter styles. That would be a good mechanism for that. Roger, every time we see him, he always has a large smile, and he's cheery, and he's jolly, and he's like, "Ah, look at that, men! Shiki gathered an entire fleet to attack us, and we have but one ship. Oh well, charge!" Like, he's always doing it with a grin and a smile, and I guess those are the same thing, basically, but it's a grin and a smile. He's smiling, and his mustache is smiling, and everybody on the crew is smiling, except for Buggy. Buggy's terrified, but that would fit his personality, to have, like, a laughter fruit. And we found out from Stampede, Raftail is not actually pronounced as Raftail or written. It's actually Laugh-tail. It's pronounced the same way because L's and R's in Japanese. So you could still pronounce it as Raftail, but it's written as Laugh-tail. So yeah, it's like makes sense because it's an epic adventure. It's like the end of this tale, and it's a laughter. So okay. Actually, do you think Roger was the one that named it? Like, he might have been. I mean, it might have been called that before his time, but it's possible that it never had a name. It's possible that the people that put the One Piece there, because the One Piece was a treasure he found. It wasn't something that he gathered and then left there. He found it. All right, so it was on that island, so maybe the island had a different name or didn't have a name, and then he decided to call it Laugh-tail, because he liked to laugh, and he's a jolly pirate. Ha! Oh, Laugh-tail! It's a great name for an island. I mean, like, okay, there is another way I've looked at this. There is another ability he could have had, but I just don't think this is as impactful or special to me. But I guess you could just write it in where Roger did not have a devil fruit. He just had the strongest Conqueror's Haki in the world. Like, nobody could even get close to his Conquerors. And using that Conquerors, he could just force any opponent, no matter how mighty, to just drop to their knees and, like, bow before Roger. And that's how he took out, Bullet, and how, like, nobody could hope to match him and all that stuff. I mean, it makes sense given his character. I just think it makes way more sense for him to just be so ridiculously over-the-top, like, Incredible Hulk kind of strong. Or you give him, like, a really goofy ability, like being able to make people laugh, but being able to spin that in a way so he's, like, indestructible and invincible. Unless he gets a sort of disease, which he did. So yeah, I mean, that's my perspective there on Roger. What do you guys think about that? What do you think about Oden probably being the strongest swordsman back then, or even if he's not, like the second, like right behind Rayleigh or vice versa? What do you guys think about Douglas Bullet? Keep the plot line of the movie to a minimum, like the actual events of the movie. Like the fights that occur and stuff like that. Just keep it to maybe the character and the stuff we find out about Douglas Bullet in the movie. What do you guys think about Crocus? Like I said, I'll make a video about him, but like just a video about Crocus and talking about how like he was maybe this part of this tribe that knew stuff about medicine. Like, do you think that's possible? He was obviously a very well-known doctor for Roger to enlist him the way he did. I guess it could have been by happen chance. It could have just been like, oh, you're a doctor? Yeah, I'm a really good doctor. Oh, well, I have an illness. You want to come on in the crew? Maybe you can help me out. And maybe with Crocus, along with helping out maybe with the other doctors. Because I know Roger had to have doctors on the crew before Crocus. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. He journeyed the sea for like decades without a doctor. That's just silly. Who was the cook? Who was the cook of the Roger crew? We need to learn. Sanji needs to meet. Maybe it was Scop or Gabon. We need to meet him, and we need to teach, him some culinary lessons. I would love to talk more about Scopper, but I talked about him in the last video I made, We can see that here in a card, and we just haven't learned anything additional from Scopper since then. So, I can't really talk about him, but he might have been the cook, and I'm sure he had Conqueror's Haki too. Why not? He might have been very well the third strongest member of the crew, I guess, because, because most of Roger's crew are named after metals or something related to metal, like gold, silver, copper, even Douglas Bullets. Bullets are made out of metal. Oden obviously came from Wano. He came later. Crocus is named after a flower. He came in later. Of course, there was Buggy and Shanks. They were apprentice pirates as well, so they aren't named after metal. But they're on Seagull also. He might have come in later. But there's probably a lot more members of Roger's crew that he's going to introduce properly. Like whenever we get that backstory to Roger's crew, Oda will take like one chapter just to reveal all of the main members of the crew that made up the King of the Pirates, fighting force, right? Well, anyway, this is fun. I always like talking about Roger. I always like to do the piratey accent because, as we all know, Roger was the most piratey pirate that ever did pirate. So he's got to talk like a pirate, right? Alright, so anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Let me know what you think about all these characters below and the crew in general. Tekking101 signing out, me hearties. Yarg!